Hello and good morning to all my Beluga buddies. It is Wednesday, July 24th. You're with Captain Tara, and we are coming to you live from the Churchill River. A little bit of a delayed start this morning, so I apologize for everybody who is keener and ready to go first thing this morning. We had a couple extra boats at launch, so it took us a couple minutes to get out. And dealing with a little bit of wind today, but not nearly as much as I had expected. So we're super excited to be out on the water today. Before we get going, we'll acknowledge that we're operating on Treaty 5 territory. So that's the traditional homelands of the Cree, Dene, Inuit, and Métis people of Canada. And we are here on the Churchill River in Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. If it's your first time tuning in, you are in for a real treat. So buckle up your life jackets. We are heading out on the water to watch beluga whales for the next 4 hours. So we will be on the water from now until about 12:45 Central Manitoba time. And even with a little bit of wind and waves, we've already spotted some beluga whales and some feeding behavior. So we're slowly making our way to the west side of the river so that we Good morning, Beluga buddies. If you're just tuning in, welcome. I'm Captain Tara, and we are on the Churchill River on our Beluga boat Delphi, sponsored by Explore.org and Polar Bears International. We have found the beluga whales. Currently, we're seeing a large pod of whales just off our port side, so the left side of the boat. Definitely a couple hundred of them engaging in some feeding behavior. So you can probably check out some of those white humps on our on-deck cam. Uh, if our cam operators can help us sort of pan a little bit to the port side as we just work on getting those whales behind us into our camera. But it looks like all our fears about the weather, at least so far, have been resolved. We're seeing a lot of whales, a lot of feeding behavior, and the water's actually not too bad considering we've had some wind this morning. So we're really excited to be out on the water, as we thought the weather might take a turn for the worse today. But as it turns out, never trust those weather apps because it's beautiful outside. It's nice and warm. The river is fairly calm. A little bit of wave action, but nothing too crazy. We've got a little haze, kind of smoke dusted sky this morning. We can smell some of the smoke from some of the wildfires within Manitoba here. But all things aside, we're going to have a great day. We can hear the whales and we can see the whales, and we're so excited you're joining us. If it's your first time tuning in, don't forget we've got that message board where you can not only share photos you're taking, but also ask questions about beluga whales. So we've got a couple beluga scientists on the boat today. We've got Jacqueline, who's working on her PhD with beluga whales, and Courtney is back from the Assiniboia Park Zoo. And a special guest, a colleague of Courtney's, Anastasia, who's actually studying out of a university in Scotland to be a marine biologist. So all kinds of water experts on the boat here today. Should we have any questions, do feel free to post them on the message board. I do try to keep up with it and answer them as those become available. But otherwise, enjoy the whales, and thanks for tuning in today. Good morning, and shout out to Buffykins and Being Still and Arctic Fox. Good to see you guys, and thanks for joining us this morning. Hopefully, a little bit later of a time for you to rise and shine with us this morning. So, I just to update you guys with what we're seeing and dealing with on the river today. Um, Again, that feeding behavior here on the west side of the river. So we're seeing probably hundreds of whales just kind of doing their feeding behavior. Not a lot of engagement with the boat so far this morning, but nice to see the whales out there doing their thing. We also, as a group, I think we've spotted at least two mamas and babies. Questionably more, but we aren't getting enough of a glimpse to verify that they're different whales yet. So um, and just so you guys are up to date on what we're dealing with, we've got a wind out of the southwest today, a light wind, which makes me happy because I was worried it was going to be quite strong today. Um, but as a result, that wind is pushing us back towards the port. So every time I turn my camera to give you guys the shot of that feeding behavior, it's pushing us further away from the port. So then we'll turn back and try to get a little bit closer and then turn and point the camera. So if you're seeing a lot of like whale action and then the port, it's just because of the wind that we're dealing with here today. So I'm just turning the boat to try to get the best angle back for you viewers so that hopefully you can see the mom and babies too. In other exciting news, something to look forward to on our adventure today, there is another boat at the port of Churchill. So this is exciting news because if you were with us last year, I think we had two boats the whole year, and it was very late in the season. And we've already had one cargo ship this year, which we did a good job of showcasing to the viewers. And now today we've got a Canada Coast Guard boat. So you'll catch that as we're heading back into port, or if you've got a super keen eye when the camera's pointed at the port, you'll see a little bit of red and white, and that's our Canadian Coast Guard boat. We're wondering if it was escorting maybe that cargo ship in and out of the bay. But still really exciting to see that, kind of a rare sight here in Churchill. But once again, thanks for joining. Good morning, everyone. Happy you're with us, and thank you for your patience as we navigate some current and wind to give you hopefully some great footage of beluga whales. Hello, friends. Just a friendly reminder that if you're just tuning in and keen to hear some of the sounds that the belugas make, as they are known as the canaries of the sea, you can hear those sounds on our underwater camera. So our boat is equipped with a hydrophone, um, and we can often hear the sounds resonating through the boat, as it is an aluminum boat. But if you're interested in just hearing the whales in the background, make sure you've got the sound on for the underwater camera. That sound is muted on the on-deck camera. So when they're really active, I'll try to come on the mic and just remind you to maybe tune into that underwater camera for some sounds. Still seeing lots of mama and babies. Again, not a ton of engagement with the boat itself so far, as there is all that feeding behavior currently on our port side. But we are having some whales sort of come over and take a peek at the boat, and then just trying to observe any babies sort of learning how to do that, the up down to chase the capelin. So hopefully we're getting some of that on the camera for you. And once they have full bellies, never know what we're going to see. Looks like we're having a little bit of beluga love on that underwater camera. The feeding group is off to our port side currently, but looks like we've got a couple curious whales coming over to the boat to say hi. Not sure if you're seeing that on the on deck cam because they are seemingly swimming over under the water, but just kind of as we're running up and down the river beside them, we're getting a few to come over, take a little break from their meal, and they're saying hello. Hello, Beluga buddies. I just got to give a shout out to our cam operators. It seems today that the whales are a bit shy. It seems like they're being a little bit elusive on the camera and just out of reach on that underwater camera. They're coming right up to the boat and sitting beside us, but just out of reach of the underwater camera. So I don't know if we've got some belugas who don't want their photo taken today, but I see that our cam operators are really honing in that on deck camera to just try to catch them as they're coming up to the boat. So just shout out to our cam operators. They really do make the magic, showing you all the whales. So great job, guys. Keep it up. I think I am going to turn the boat again, and we'll try to move further up the river, so that will turn our camera angle to have the whales be on our starboard side. So just a little bit of a heads up as we turn and head south up the river. We are seeing the waves pick up a little bit here today, but it is still pretty calm. It's a little bit rougher when we're traveling into the wind, as anybody who's been on a boat knows, it's always more comfortable to go with it. So just bear with us if we're getting a little rocky rolly. We try to go just as far south as we can to have that natural, nice, comfortable drift on the other way. So again, shout out to the camera operators. Thanks guys so much. You're doing a great job. Cheers. Well, we're certainly getting lucky out here with some whales making an appearance on that camera. Um, but again, lots of sounds coming through the boat. So if you're not volume up on that underwater camera, I do recommend it. Lots of communication happening right now, and great shots on the underwater cam. You guys are getting the literal beluga bits. So nice work. Well, friends, I am feeling pretty grateful for what we've been able to capture on the on deck cam and the little bit of engagement we're getting on that underwater camera. Even the whales that are like just seemingly right beside the camera, it's nice to see that we are getting some of them uh, curious and inquisitive about it. So. Just based on the conditions and the behavior today, I'm super happy we've been able to capture what we have. So, um, very excited to see that. Still lots of feeding behavior, again, just in between us and the western shoreline of the Churchill River. And just really on the lookout for babies. We've spotted a couple the last few days. We're definitely seeing a lot of yearlings. So, as our science friends, our researchers on the boat are discussing when we spot them if they're looking like yearlings or fresh babies. Again, yearlings just being the whales that were born last year, but still hanging out with their mom. So lots of yearlings and a few little babies we're managing to catch. So um, yeah, the word of the day is families for the whales. Last couple days have been the large males, but the word of the day is families. If you're not checking out that underwater camera right now, have a sneak peek because we do have a little friend showing off his fins. Well, friends, apparently our message about the Kansas bread got through, as we're seeing a ton of engagement on that underwater camera. The feeding frenzy has kind of notably spread out or split up a little bit. We're trying to make our way back closer to shore to get some of those whales, and lo and behold, we've got them just all over the underwater cameras. So I'm sure your clicking fingers are getting a workout. We also did just, attempt to do one other thing for one hot second, and the second we looked away, we had full engagement. So thanks to everybody, and great shots. Oh, Winter Rose, welcome back. Good to see you. Captain Tara saying hi. Is a beautiful shot from the underwater camera. And the water clarity, can you guys believe it? We didn't see this kind of clarity until very, very late in the season last year. So awesome for our Beluga Bits project to be getting these kinds of photos so early in the season. So great job, gang. Keep it up. Well, it looks like the feeding frenzy is back on, folks. Things got really quiet there for a minute, but now we're just seeing those numbers have come back and the whales are surfacing currently off our starboard side, just again in between us and the west side of the river. But lots of engagement there after, I don't know, it was pretty quiet for maybe half hour. But we're very grateful to have all those groups come to our camera. Geez, I see a couple shots on the message board. 6 whales in one photo. So great shooting. And back to that on deck camera action. So keeping our camera operators busy today, boy. But gosh, are we ever grateful for it. Well, I'm not sure if some of our viewers have noticed from the on deck cam there, but it is definitely like a hazy day here in Churchill today. So if you missed us first thing this morning when we got on the water, we were just speaking about the little bit of haze and some smoke that was rolling in from some fires with the wind. But as we continue to spend more time on the water here, it just seems like more and more smoke is blowing in. We can no longer see the opening to the mouth of the river. It's just hazed right over. So if you're getting a little bit of that eerie vibe from that on deck camera, just know like we're experiencing that too, and even just wondering if that air quality is affecting or noticed by the whales. It is sort of like a really chill vibe today. Even the engagement we've had has just been very like mellow, not the splashing and whatnot that we've seen over the last couple days. But certainly like a lot going on under the water. We're hearing a lot of chatter come through the boat. So if you're monitoring that underwater cam, I'm sure you're hearing all that chatter too. But just, yeah, the whales are feeling the hazy day out here on the river with us. So it's still nice to see them. The waves have kept their crest to a minimum, so it is easy to spot the belugas. And for a day that I thought was just going to be treacherous, things have worked out really, really well. I'm just very excited and grateful for all that's happening right now. So just a friendly reminder, folks, we are on the water till 12:45 Central Time. So that gives us about another hour and a half as we'll just navigate around this feeding frenzy for you. So again, thanks for joining the Explore.org and Polar Bears International Beluga Boat. Hey team, as we're taking a little bit of break from our photo opportunities with our resident beluga and Arctic species expert, I thought we could just share a couple of the neat things that we were somewhat discussing today. One of them being we were noting, a ton of moms and babies. And Courtney, fancy enough, was actually just looking up some research last night about if beluga whales are able to have more than one baby at a time, or also known as twins. We talk a lot about that with the bears, but not a lot of that with the belugas. So I thought, Courtney, do you mind sharing what you learned about, how often that is seen, when it's been seen, and what the success rate for moms with two little babies is?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we get that a lot. We see twins, obviously, like in a lot of terrestrial mammals, but to my knowledge, it's pretty rare to see twins in a lot of marine mammals. So, yeah, I was looking up in one of our reference books to see what the incidence of twins were, and from what I could find, it seems like the number of belugas that we've seen with twins is very, very low, like maybe only 5 recorded cases,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, maybe 3 of those were whales that were in a facility somewhere. So they were able to kind of monitor those individuals and I think that only one of the twins might have survived in any one of those cases. So,
Because you were saying that one of them is usually significantly smaller than the other baby.
yeah, I think it's just that it's such a burden to have twins in a marine mammal. Like they have to, because of the water that they live in, they're having to invest quite a bit of energy into getting that animal, that their young one, with enough fat layer to stay warm and all of that. So uh, from what I could see, the documented cases, the twins were about 90% of their normal size, so not too much smaller. Um, but obviously, that sort of kind of puts them both at a disadvantage for their size.
Yeah, and it must be like a real burden on the mom because they are providing milk to that baby
Mm-hmm.
for a significant number of time, let alone double the milk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So they're pretty well adapted to getting a lot of fat into their young ones as quickly as possible. They need that blubber layer to stay warm. So if you can imagine having to double that suddenly, that's pretty rare. We
Well, and I also am just thinking that when we see these really big whales out here, we were talking about this yesterday that they're the males, getting up to and sometimes over 2,000, but the females are isn't their weight range somewhere between like 500 and 1,200 pounds, so they're significantly smaller, let alone to be carrying a bunch of milk.
Yeah, I think there's some population differences on the size of males and females, but yeah, the males do tend to be a bit larger than the females. For marine mammals in general, it's sort of uh, they sort of have two different ways that they'll like kind of go about feeding themselves and keeping themselves full for the costs of raising a young one. So we have what's called capital breeders. So those are ones that kind of invest all their energy in one go without feeding during that time. So they're kind of limited to having the capital, if you will, of fat that they have on board
Oh, I
to
get it.
nurse
Capital breeders.
their young. Or we have income breeders, and I believe that beluga kind of classify as income breeders because the young tend to stay with them from anywhere from a year to a couple of years in some cases. So they'll kind of nurse and feed and nurse and feed, and we're seeing that here in these big feeding aggregations. We see moms with young ones, either yearlings or calves, kind of hitting these what we think are capelin balls around here.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, that is indeed what sort of prompted this discussion about mums having more than one baby. Because what we had seen once yesterday and then one today was a mum and then a little baby and then an adolescent or maybe a yearling on the other side of it. So assuming that those were all related. And then Jacqueline was talking about seeing from her St. Lawrence population almost even a little sibling rivalry with that. And what we're assuming is a yearling, so a year old beluga with like a fresh baby this year, kind of like vying for mom's attention. But so basically just saying that a mom is always going to have like maybe more than one baby, but they're going to be at least a year apart or something.
Yeah, they typically only have one calf a year, as we were saying, but yeah, we're still learning quite a bit about the social dynamics. So it could be that a yearling has weaned from the mom and is still kind of hanging around with that group. So you might see those kind of mixed family groups. I'm not sure if we know if they'll kind of nurse two young, so one that's older and one that's younger at the same time. I think we're still trying to learn that. I've seen it in stellar sea lions that I used to work on many years ago,
Neat.
where we'll have we call them super moms. They'll have one juvenile that's maybe 2 or 3 years old, and then a brand new pup nursing at the same time. So kind of rare cases, but yeah, those are what we call super moms.
Supermom is the right title. And I'll just say maybe Jacqueline can actually just speak really quickly about. Jacqueline was telling us that with your St. Lawrence population, that you were able to track the data of families. So you'd know like a grandma, a mom, and then another baby. Do you just want to say really quickly how you guys did that? That's remarkable.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got a really extensive photo ID catalog on the go in the St. Lawrence. maintained and contributed to by the Groupe de Recherche et d'Éducation pour les Mammifères Marins, the GREM.
Wow.
So that is a really big research group in that area. They've been working, doing photo ID in that area for over 25 years now. And they've amassed a huge amount of data of photos of individuals that have recognizable marks and scars. So we've got, not the entire population cataloged, but a fair proportion of the population cataloged. And so because they've been taking photos of individuals for so many years, we have instances of a mom that was well known who would have a calf, and then we would watch that calf grow up over the years through the photos. Sometimes these calves would have marks of their own, so we were able to follow them in turn. And then we actually have a case where we have a grandmother, a mother, and a grandchild that are all cataloged in the photo ID catalog. So that's been pretty cool to see that kind of family relationship through our photo ID data.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you so much, Joan. That's great for sharing, and I wanted to bring that up because, again, Jacqueline's population significantly smaller than the population here in Churchill, but that's what all you viewers are doing when you're taking these photos and, starting out with males and females and now moving on to scars and identifying marks. That's exactly what the Beluga Bits project is about. So just hearing how that data can be used to track family members from Jacqueline has been like super interesting, just to know that like the system works. But I did just want to go back to Courtney, because speaking of identifying marks, that's what we're doing. Same as you guys. We're looking at the on-deck cameras and the underwater cameras to find potential identifying marks. That's what our scientists are taking pictures of with the belugas. But Courtney was actually just speaking about something that I thought was initially scarring with these long, I guess you described it almost like claw marks, but I thought that was potential scarring from scraping or whatever, but you're saying it's not scars, or it's not actually from danger. So maybe you could just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot, especially on beluga bits, because it looks, we ask our community scientists to help us identify distinguishing marks so we can build our photo ID database and get those sort of mark resites of known individuals. But we'll see a lot on the whales what we call rake marks. So they're like these kind of shallow, dragged, almost, they look kind of like maybe like a claw mark, but very, very superficial on the skin, so quite shallow.
I think rake is a really good definition too, because it almost looks like a rake has gone over them.
Yeah, it looks like a garden rake has kind of gone over their backs.
But they're not very deep either. They just seem really surface-based.
Yeah, so kind of using these photo ID kind of catalogs, we've actually seen how quickly they kind of disappear, and they can disappear like within weeks, within months. Like they don't typically stick around. So when we're looking for distinguishing features, the rake marks usually won't help us too much in the long term for identifying marks. So we're looking more for deep wounds, like sort of old scars, kind of deformities, or we get
potentially infections.
Yeah, we get
right?
There's some diseases that cause like very particular scarring patterns. There's like a pox virus, I think, that cause almost like a tattoo-like lesion. It's like it almost looks like Morse code tattoo lines, I guess, if you will.
Interesting. I think one of our viewers actually caught a photo of that. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, but it was like those 3 dots, and I think maybe someone even did sort of mention some tattooing, but we're thinking that was like signs of maybe an infection or a...
Yeah, it could be. We'll have to look at it in more detail on the photos that we get. But yeah, there's one particular individual that I'm thinking of in our Beluga Bits project that I think has been called Morse for that specific reason. So one of our amazing community scientists actually respotted this individual over like a 5-year period. So, might have appeared in 2017, and then we recited it again in 2022. So when we have these sort of long-term marks, it really helps us to understand not only it's exciting because you get to see the same individuals year on year, but we can actually use that as a way to estimate, the number of individuals that are coming into the estuary and sort of when they're arriving. Maybe we see that Morse only comes for a couple of weeks every year, and we can get a better idea of when they're coming, how long they're staying for, and so we can look at individual behavior, but also population dynamics as well.
Oh, that's so awesome. And then just to be clear, the raking is not that because it's only just temporary.
Yeah, so I went off on a tangent there, but the rake marks are more of kind of, we think, social engagement. So they'll actually kind of almost drag their teeth on each other. It's, we think
Really?
it's like
their teeth are making those marks?
Yeah, so we think it's like social interactions. It could be, dominance, kind of like we see in polar bears where they do that sparring behavior where it's not really direct aggression, but it's kind of, play aggression, if you will.
We have seen that on the underwater cam where like a bigger whale's like, get out of there, like I'm on the camera. So that's really fun.
Yeah, and for those of you that were in on Monday, we had quite a number of, we think, adult males that were following the boat, and they were all kind of jostling for position. And
yeah, Courtney has lovingly named them the Goon Squad, so I think that's great.
Yeah, they were sort of doing that, and then they kept breaking off and doing what we think is maybe some socializing off on their own. So some of you might have caught that on the above deck cam.
Yeah,
Monday.
they certainly did. Like they looked like they were kind of having fun. Like I recall watching them just being like, what are they even doing? Like they're not fishing. They're just kind of doing some hot laps around the boat and playing together. So kind of neat that they're just doing that little. I mean, maybe it's even like I'll scratch my back, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But that's so interesting to find out they're from teeth. I definitely didn't know that, so I bet a lot of our viewers didn't either. Thank you so much for sharing that, Courtney and Jacqueline. Like, it's just every day a little bit of like new information, and it's so interesting, especially for those of us that have been out here a couple years. It's so great to have like beluga-focused individuals on the boat. So things have slowed down a little bit on our feeding frenzy gang, so I'm sure you've caught wind of that just from watching the cameras. So if you did have any questions, feel free to post them on the board, and we'll see what we can do to get the gals to give us a little bit of info and point us in the right direction. Hey, folks. We are just, I think what do we got here? About an hour and 15 minutes left to go. Um, but it just kind of hit me like a brick wall. I'm very sad today because it is going to be Courtney's last day on the boat. Kind of forgot for a second that you are leaving this evening. So we've been so busy picking your brain for all your whale facts that forgot to maybe acknowledge that it is your last day on the boat. And just to remind everybody who might not have got Courtney's official introduction, um, Courtney is a Arctic species specialist at the Assiniboine Park Zoo with a focus coming out of your master's and PhD, I believe, on the narwhals. So the other toothed whale, if you will. So for anybody who's not familiar with narwhals, that's the really cute whale with little spots, a big unicorn type thing on their nose, which, as our whale people have told us, is actually a tooth. So I just wanted to ask, Courtney, when you head out and you're going back, where are your journeys going to take you? Do you have some trips coming up? What are you doing once you're leaving Churchill?
Yeah, so I unfortunately head back tonight, which I'm very sad about. It's been a really stellar start to the season, and I'm really excited to see like all the snapshots that you guys are pulling off for us. That's really helpful for our Beluga Bits work. So yeah, I'll be going back. We'll start kind of analyzing some of the data that we've gathered. So when we haven't been talking, we've been taking lots of above water photos to try to identify individuals. So we'll be kind of getting that organized. We've taken some 360 video, which we're using for our research, but also for kind of educational purposes. So,
And boy, is that some video, gang. We are just in awe of the footage that these 360 cameras are covering. So that's going to be really exciting to spend some time on.
yeah, so we're hoping if anybody has an Oculus account, I believe you can access. We have a channel, I guess it is, that we've posted a few videos. So if you want some of that cool 360, very up close and personal beluga fun, I urge you to check that out. But yeah, we'll be kind of monitoring what's going on with Beluga Bits and hoping that we're gonna get some new community scientists to join the effort, and yeah, get some more work done. But
So kind of sounds like you're heading back to the lab and hitting
yeah,
the books.
yeah, in
No more field fun, if you will.
that cliche, head back to the lab. Yeah.
Are you working on anything with the narwhals at the zoo right now, or just because 'tis the season, the beluga focus only?
Yeah, so I still collaborate quite a bit with some of my colleagues who are doing narwhal research elsewhere in the Arctic. So here in Hudson Bay, there is a population of narwhal, but they tend to be much further north, so more towards northern Hudson Bay here. So yeah, I'm still working on a couple of research manuscripts or papers to get published on narwhal. So for part of my postdoc work that was with Fisheries and Oceans Canada and University of Windsor, we were looking at narwhal migrations. So migratory behavior is something that I think a lot about. So
Yeah, you've mentioned that a lot, just about how the different beluga populations. We were discussing some Alaskan migration with the Pacific Ocean, and then these guys and Greenland with the Atlantic Ocean. So that's really interesting that it's nice when different researchers have different focuses.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the Assiniboine Park Zoo and Conservancy, one of our conservation research department, one of our main sort of themes, I guess, for our research is understanding the changing Arctic. So with narwhal, we were studying migration, and one of the things that we're concerned about or we've noticed is that the migratory timing, so when they're coming and when they're going, is actually changing.
Oh.
And we think that this is in line with, sort of the changes that we've seen in sea ice dynamics across the Arctic. So we're really just trying to understand, like, how it's changing. It's not, kind of the same for every place. We're learning more and more about, the dynamics of how things are shifting in certain parts of the Arctic is not necessarily the rule for elsewhere in the Arctic. So
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm learning between yourself and Casey and Stefan and now Jacqueline, is just that these populations are really different. And, much like people, not one beluga is representative of all the different locations and different pods and groups of belugas. The behaviors sometimes polar opposite different.
Yeah.
Really similar to polar bears. I know Polar Bears International has classified about 20 different groups of polar bears around the circumpolar Arctic, and they are all classified differently because they operate differently and behave differently. So
Yeah.
kind of neat to think that marine species, one ocean, but it's not all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think here in Hudson Bay, we've seen over the last the last 20 years or so, that the open water period, so the period where the ice is not around, has increased by about 2 weeks on either end. So a whole month longer sort of summer season than we had 20 or 30 years ago. So very different sort of situation than we had before.
Yeah, and that's I know we definitely track that with the polar bears at the Polar Bears International House, but interesting and awesome to find out that you guys are also tracking that with the marine species.
Yeah. Yeah, we're learning so much about it, and it's really interesting to see. It's also people are kind of always ask like, oh, are you really worried about it? And one of the things that we worry with climate change is that it's going to happen faster than animals can adapt, which is a big worry. But kind of the bright spot that we see with them shifting their migratory timing is that they do have what we call behavioral plasticity, so the ability to change their behavior to match the environment. And so, we're thinking that, maybe it's a good thing that they're kind of adjusting to the new normal, and they're much more flexible, perhaps, than we might have thought.
Yeah, so seeing that timing change is maybe beneficial for them on some level. Awesome.
Yeah, still lots to learn, but...
I do have one question, and I we'll maybe just make this a little discussion, because I know I am just going to throw it at you, and worst case scenario, we'll just pass it off to Jacqueline. But one of our, I'll just read directly from the message board. Hi, can you talk about any symbiotic cross-species interactions that may occur between belugas and other whales or other species? This individual says they've heard of instances where dolphins have helped usher larger gray-blue whale that was once caught in a bay. Curious if there are any account of this kind of behavior. Also, can you talk about beluga mating birth, same mates over the years, or changes? So that is a mouthful, and what a great question. I think there's about 4 questions buried in there. So Casey, why don't we get you to, or not Casey, I'm sorry, Jacqueline. Why don't I get you to maybe talk about if you've heard any instances where like dolphin engagement with the beluga whales? I mean, you're in the St. Lawrence. There's a lot of wildlife in there, including larger whales. So any experience with that?
Yes, I would actually love to tell the story of Nardet, who is a narwhal who lives in the St. Lawrence. So the St. Lawrence obviously is, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but it's quite southern. So that's the southernmost beluga population that we have. There are no narwhals in the St. Lawrence, except for this one narwhal that came from, we don't really know where. He left his family, traveled south, and found himself in the St. Lawrence estuary.
Yeah, we were speaking of this when Courtney got here because of her relation to the narwhals, and then we heard the St. Lawrence population has a narwhal friend.
Yes, so this narwhal has been living in the St. Lawrence now for several years. I think actually the first time I saw him was in 2017. So quite a few years now. He's been in
you've
the St.
seen
Lawrence.
him?
Yes, I've had the pleasure.
First-hand account.
Yes.
Amazing.
And he actually it's a male narwhal. He has the tooth. And he lives in a group of male belugas, and he interacts with these belugas like he's just another beluga. We have a lot of questions about how he communicates with them. We know that belugas and narwhals have fairly similar sounds that they produce, but obviously they're very different species. So it's very interesting to think about how this narwhal might have adapted his communication to better communicate with his beluga buddies.
Yeah, like he's like learning the language and maybe one little word at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
But
gosh.
he seems to be fully integrated into this group, and we've kind of just been waiting for the day that we see a narwhal beluga hybrid, because these two species can actually hybridize. So we've been on the lookout waiting to see if we get a Narluga baby in the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, I think we touched on this last week, and one of our moderators actually, I think, shared a link about. You can, for anybody who's not going to be able to go back to the message board, I think if you just Google Beluga narwhal skull, we see
Yes.
remnants of like one other time that this happened before, and it was recovered.
Yes.
So, oh gosh, that's so interesting. And I think it was Casey who was telling us that what we saw, I don't know if anybody had observed that whale in the wild, but what we noticed is that like the teeth sort of meshed up weird. Like instead of that flat beluga chomper or that long narwhal point, they had kind of like jagged shaped teeth in the skull.
Yeah, some really weird teeth in that skull, and it makes you wonder how that whale was able to feed, if it maybe had a different feeding style than either of its parents, a beluga or a narwhal, just because it had that really strange dentition going on.
And do you know much about if there is that cross species? Because I know we've seen this. We've seen this in a polar bear grizzly bear situation. Basically, like one mom, I think, got a little bit further south and mated with a grizzly. So I believe they're calling them growler bears. But basically, my understanding from our research and science at Polar Bears International, that like the bears weren't well suited because they weren't quite a marine mammal like a polar bear, but they weren't quite like down to stay in the forest. So they were maybe a little bit like, I don't know if handicap's the right word, or mentally challenged, but they weren't like successful bears. They were kind of like not knowing what to do bears. Do we know anything about that mixture with belugas and narwhals, or is it something you're concerned about, or not so much because they're the same type of toothed whale?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's going to be, so we haven't, not to my knowledge, we haven't observed a living hybrid in the wild. So I can't really speak to how well adapted a potential hybrid would
Nope,
be
that's fair.
to its environment. But it's certainly interesting to think about. You have these two different species coming together that have different habits and behaviors. And so it is interesting to think about what that might lead to in a hybrid. Now, of course, I would say a polar bear and a brown bear or a grizzly may be more different from each other than a beluga and a narwhal. But who's to say? Maybe to a narwhal, a beluga is like very, very different, and we really don't understand much yet about their social structure and their social behavior. So it's possible that to a beluga, a narwhal is like very, very strange and
they are kind of the strangest looking of the whales, but I
Yes.
mean belugas are white, so who's to say? So does anybody, either of you happen to know, I mean, we've got that Narluga skull. Obviously that was just found somewhere. Any idea what the age of that whale could be? Like it obviously survived a little
it was
bit.
An adult. It was
Okay,
an adult
wow.
skull, so it was able to feed and survive to adulthood, but I'm not sure if we
Interesting.
know exactly how old that
Adulthood
that
is,
individual was.
adulthood's good enough for me. Love is everywhere. That's awesome. Great answer, Jacqueline. While I've got you on this, just I think a second part of that question, beluga mating and birth, same mates over the years or changes?
Yeah, probably different mates over the years. Probably often several mates in the same year. We don't really know much about mate selection in belugas. So how are the females deciding who they want to mate with? Is there a lot of competition between males for mates? We really don't have that much knowledge on beluga mating behavior, unfortunately.
Okay.
You know, they are what we would call a promiscuous mating system, where there are several individuals mating with several males mating with several females, and so on and so forth.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Mating's certainly something I think across all science that researchers are attempting to like witness and document, but I know it is super rare. And maybe I'll toss the other part of this question back to Courtney, just because Arctic species, being your specialty, can you talk or make relation to any symbiotic cross-species interactions that might occur between belugas and other whales or other species? I know we've got a few different Arctic whales that are in the same waters as belugas. Again, the individual here is referencing like some dolphins helping a blue whale. Do you know anything about their interactions, or if they spend time with other whales or dolphins or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we don't really know. There's 3 species that we call endemic to the Arctic, so they live here year round. That's beluga, narwhal, and then we have the big bowhead, which bowhead look a lot like, for those of you maybe more down south, the North Atlantic right whale. They're in the same sort of family as them. I am not aware if we know if they kind of interact, or I think I know what the viewer is talking about. Some of those interactions where, let's say, a humpback might, shove off an orca attack from a set of dolphins or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I think even those instances, like when we get that footage, it's pretty rare and it's very exciting. It's sometimes observing whale behavior is like a needle in a haystack, because you have to find the whales, be there at the right time, and be able to see that behavior. So
Well, and especially in the Arctic, I think we're really, really lucky to have like someone studying that southern population off the St. Lawrence. So for our American friends, that's basically that large body of water that's separating the northeastern United States from Canada. That's our St. Lawrence River. Again, very populated, so I would assume good for observing. And Churchill, but I mean, other than that, I think it's very challenging, as Casey was saying. I mean, she's a plane, train, and an automobile and a boat to get to northern Baffin Island to get a few photos, really. So
yeah, if you're lucky, for like, we were doing some work in northern Baffin last year, and if you're lucky, it takes you 3 days to fly up there just with flight times. And
jeez,
that's if the weather's really great and you can get there.
And you're not delayed.
And then, it's being, here we're quite well supported. There's lots of other people around, like there's safety sort of things, but sometimes when you're up in some of these areas where the whales are, you're on your own. So it's a bit more challenging. The further north you go.
No doubt, and we forget here on our live Beluga Cam, and I certainly do forget how spoiled we are in Churchill to not only have this large population of whales, but also the fact that they're curious and there's engagement. Because again, a lot of what I've learned from people is that the beluga behavior is not to run up to boats and say hi. So we're very lucky to have that engagement here, because it's certainly a lot more challenging, especially with Arctic species. So that's why I think your work is so awesome. For anybody traveling to Manitoba and landing in Winnipeg, I think it's absolutely worth a trip to the Assiniboine Park Zoo, just because of all the work and the scientists that they employ doing research in the Arctic. It's just absolutely fantastic. Thank you both so much. That was a heck of a question, so appreciate that one. I am going to let the ladies get back to any potential photos, I think, for the last 45 minutes of the tour here. Certainly a lot quieter. I think our whales are maybe having their after dinner nap because their numbers are not what they were when we started. But again, thank you so much, Jacqueline, for your thoughtful answers there. And Courtney, all the information you've shared on this trip, and it's just been such a pleasure to meet you. So I'm so excited you're here, and I really hope to see you back next year, or even later on in the summer if miracles happen. But we're just so grateful you're keen to share all your knowledge. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Alrighty, Beluga buddies. It seems that the whales have left the building. So maybe just nap time after some snacks, or they have gone further up the river to maybe just do some shallow water resting, if you will. We've exhausted our efforts here on the west side with the last remaining belugas, but they are just trying to get that last bit of capelin out there. So we have about 15 minutes left on the water here. So I'm battling the waves to get back to port, and I was hoping we could just take those last few minutes on the camera, if not showcasing beluga whales, to show you the Canadian Coast Guard ship that is at the port. So you guys should be able to see that as we get a little closer. I'll try to do a couple laps as long as we've got that extra time on the water. But she is quite the beautiful ship. So I thought that might be a nice way to end the day for everybody who's stuck it out with us. We do appreciate it. I know we had a lot more going on today than I suspected. So lots of great underwater shots, and definitely some on-deck camera of that feeding behavior. So super excited we got that, and the weather was nice to us, minus the smoke. I can tell that that wind is picking up a little bit now. But we'll safely get back to the port here and finish off for the day. And just a reminder, folks, I encourage you to join me on the water tomorrow. You'll have me, Captain Tara, and we will be on the water from about 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time here in Manitoba. So as usual, a 4-hour day on the water, pending weather conditions, of course. But I'm hoping you can tune in and join me then. As we get close to ending our tour, I just want to take a minute to thank Explore.org and Polar Bears International for making it possible for us to get out on the water and record these beautiful beasts that we call our beluga buddies. What a pleasure it is to be able to share that with you, and that credit really goes to Explore.org and Polar Bears International for sponsoring the project. Thank you to my camera operators and moderators today. You guys certainly had your work cut out for you, as we did have whales that were busy feeding. So thank you for all your efforts behind the scenes to make that possible on camera for all our viewers. And thanks to the viewers. Looks like we had anywhere from 30 to 40 today. So it was so great to have you guys tune in and join us. And again, we're on the water every day, Monday to Friday, and you can catch that schedule on the Explore.org message board. For now, this is Captain Tara signing off. I've got a few more minutes where, like I said, you'll catch that Canadian Coast Guard ship as we make our way to shore. But thanks again for joining, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.